use sustainability assessments, when to use, and what for. It was the ideal agenda for this session, but in fact, you will have the intro by me and also by Aline. And then after, it was forecast that we will have 3 testimonies about what was the interest of assessing performances on sustainability for the case studies in development. But the COVID was there, so I'm sorry, but Marianne and Michael are in their beds and they are ill, so they won't be able to testify. But I will hope to give some clues about what they have experienced during the use and their collaboration between the case study and the building of a specific tool for this type of farms. Then after we will discuss at the end of these testimonies about how to maintain the access of tools developed by the project financed by the EU. Then there will be time for discuss, of course. So how to support diversification with assessing performances on sustainability? It's a question on what are the purposes of this assessment. And there is several scales where it's possible to use it, and it is useful then to help to support diversification. The most well-known is at the coping system scale, where it's possible to do a diagnosis system when you are designing new systems, when you are designing new systems with diversified methods, and when you want to monitor to adapt what's happening in your systems. I will detail it later. The second part is where I was waiting for the testimony of Michael and Marianne, but I will do my best to testify about it. It was why to assess all the performances on sustainability, why to have a holistic view of all the impacts of diversification, because it will help you to do strategic choice, for instance, which crop according to the pedoclimatic context of my farm. It will give you the possibility to have organization, to choose your organization, whether you will buy machinery or you will share machinery, as mentioned this morning by Aline. And at the landscape and territory scale, as mentioned this morning also during by Emmanuel, it's a good way to manage a common good, for instance, water, and it was also discussed by Hauke during his testimony. But it's a good way to do a good coordination between farmers. For instance, as said by Emmanuel, when you want to reconnect animal and plant production, and it's a way to be sure that the fluxes between the two types of farms are equal and have a good basis of equality. It's also a way, when you evaluate at the territory and landscape scale, to evaluate ex ante, a priori, all the consequences of a new chain in a collection area. Is it possible to implement it? And what is the consequences on concurrency with the existing productions? Sorry. So at the end, last but not least, and it was just discussed before, it is possible, for instance, with LCA to do the environmental and social impacts of products, and it's a good way to have objective basis for labeling, which is not the case for most of the time, because you have not real environmental impact or societal impact for the existing labeling, and there is a lot of more and more labels on your products. One example for cropping system, for evaluating at cropping system scale. If you know me, you know this type of dashboard. This type of dashboard, because on the left you will have the evaluation of the global sustainability of a cropping system, of an existing one. Then after you will have all the notes, all the evaluation for the basic criteria that will explain the construction of your environmental pillar, the social pillar, and the economic pillar. In this case, when you are discussing with a farmer, it's very easy to discuss about what is red, what can be improved, what is already good, and is there lever for improvement or not. So it's an assessment, and it's a way to identify weak and strong points of technical strategies on rotation. What to do when the departure point. I think it's quite French, departure point. But when you are conceiving, when you are designing new cropping systems. And for instance, here you have the case of the practice cropping system, where there was a diagnosis, and where the possibility is when you are designing and when you want to introduce innovations in cropping systems. Here is the case of you will introduce innovations not used by the farmer, but already well used and well known in the cropping system, and it's possible to make a first evaluation. If you are in the case of experiments, long-term experiments, or also with farmers who like to experiment on-farm experiments, it's possible to test with very innovative methods. For instance, some things that only are in labs. Sorry. So it's a good way to have to choose between options when you are designing and when you have a lot of new cropping systems, because it's a way to spare time and money to choose it before implementing in a farm or in an experiment. Then it's also a good way to help in monitoring trials and interpretation of results in long-term experiments, and to help in adaptation of systems by step-by-step design with farmer. In this case, it was the first diagnosis was done in 2006, and the objective was the transition from for weed management. It was weed management with herbicides, nothing else. So it was the first step was, okay, we will manage, but also with agronomic levers, and one of them was the rotation. So first evaluation, then the evaluation after one complete rotation, and it was a good way to discuss with all the group of farmers about what they have implemented in their farm, considering their pedoclimatic context and their economic constraints, and then they discuss all together to know what is possible to be generalized or not. And then it's always there is a new round of evaluation that will be forecast at the end of this adaptation that were made in 2017. Okay. So what we did during the project is that we have elaborated at the cropping system scale a minimal list of indicators to assess sustainability. That was calculated by a new information system called System, which was adapted for diversification and translated in English. And we have also designed new index and new indicators, because we want to know, and it was important for discussion with farmers, we want to know all the ecosystem services that will be rendered by the diversification. So why is it interesting to grow 4 crops instead of 3, 5 crops instead of 4? So it was a way to answer these questions that could be of interest when we want to change. Then after, we have also what I said about the farm, and there is a specific tool for the farm for the diversification at the scale of the farm. Maelia, which is a modeling platform, was used, and there will be a testimony to know what happened when you want to make evaluation at the territory scale. Is it a catchment basin, or is it a big agricultural landscape? And last but not least, there was adaptation of LCA method to better take into account the diversification of rotations. But the question is, okay, that's fine, we are in a big research project, we have specialists that can help you. But when you are a farmer, when you are an advisor, and you want to choose the proper method or the proper tool to help monitoring and implement diversification. So I will let the floor to Aline because she has the answer.
Effectively, to support this action decision making, we have designed a toolbox to try to target easily resources, and especially tools, to support crop diversification. So as highlighted by case studies, the process of diversification can require different kind of activities that need support during the different step of the diversification process. It can be assessment, design of a cropping system, mobilization of references, consultation of inspirational example, and so on. And there's a diversity of existing tools, of existing resources, which are available that can be mobilized at these different steps. Here you have some examples from the Impact project, but also from outside. And at the beginning of the project, we made a first inventory. And we identified about 50 tools related to crop diversification. And so the work in the project, but also in other projects from for example, crop diversification cluster, we identified other kind of resources that are needed to foster crop diversification. And today we have identified and described 143 resources, which are all described in a database, which is available. But this database contains a huge amount of information that we have to help user to use. All these resources cover different formats, such as guided documents, videos, but also decision-making tools, serious games. They cover the different scales that described Frédéric just before, and they also covered a large range of activities that are mobilized by actors of diversification, as a case study have used during their life during the project. So to make this database efficiently and easily usable by a large range of actors, we built a toolbox that help the user to target easily the most relevant resources regarding their needs. So after answering a set of questions for describing needs and context, the DEXI model, which is behind the toolbox, compares the needs and the content of the database. And this aggregated model with about 15 attributes allows to sort resources regarding the described needs, and then provide a short list of with the most relevant resources with links to access to them. So to present you more concretely this toolbox, I will share a short video to conclude, this toolbox is available. There's a current version available on Diver Impact website. This is still in progress, and you can also find the access to the different reference and tools that I presented, that Frédéric presented before. So now I will give the floor to Stefano.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Stefano will introduce the 3 testimonies. And so Stefano Canali is a research manager at CREA in Rome. He's involved in the WP4 as the key leader and also the task 4.1 leader.
Thank you so much for this kind of introduction. And my role is to do the anchorman, more or less, introducing these 3 testimonies. The first one is made as a testimony about a Sicilian experience, southern Italy. Our Sicilian cropping system diversified with hemp sustainable, and this is a video that has been done in collaboration of FIRAB, CREA and CRAW, and a colleague of mine is the voice, please.
Hello from Sicily. My name is Giovanni Daraguccione, and I work with FIRAB as a case study 9 monitor carried out in Sicily with the aim of diversifying agricultural systems, usually focused on the cultivation of durum wheat. The case study was launched by initially involving 2 farms, one conventional and one organic, which were interested in increasing the diversification of their arable land over time. Less than a year after the start of the project and starting from an initial exploration of alternative crops that could enrich the diversification process, 2 other farms engaged in the pioneering cultivation of hemp were integrated among the case study actors. This enabled the case study 9 group to benefit from practical experience on this crop and to promote innovative trajectories to be discussed within and beyond the case study 9 collective. Case study 9 has thus devoted attention and self-training initiatives to the cultivation and value-building aspects of hemp-based food chains, drawing on external experts and the practical experiences of pioneering growers. In this framework, attention was also paid to assessing how diversified cropping systems that include hemp in the crop rotation perform from an agroecological and economic point of view. Together with the Italian colleagues of CREA of WP4, a data collection system was set up and tested on 4 farms of case study 9, with particular attention to the 2 farms that had included hemp in their cultivation plans. The integration of hemp in rotation, coupled with the adoption of organic farming management, significantly improved the sustainability performance of the 2 assessed farms. The most striking difference is evidenced by the environmental dimension. The economic dimension is mostly impacted in terms of gross margin in both farms due to the opportunities arising from marketing of hemp products. A discussion was thus initiated with these farms to discuss the interim results of the performance evaluation in order to set up ex-ante reasoning through which the cultivation system could be redesigned, improving its performance in a way that was compatible and adaptable to the strategic and managerial choices of the farm themselves. The 2 ex-ante scenarios, 1 per farm, were therefore co-designed and assessed in order to reduce the weakness arising from the interim results without reducing the positive performances. In addition to the evaluation of the performance of the diversified cultivation system along the economic, ecological and social dimension, the part of crop diversification was also analyzed with regard to the life cycle analysis of a pasta, whose semolina was integrated with hemp flour thanks to the collaboration with Belgian colleagues from WP4. The basic idea here is that crop diversification should go hand in hand with dietary diversification, including the one represented by the incorporation into a single product, usually monocultural, of ingredients expressing diversification in the field. The life cycle assessment study compared 3 types of pasta: conventional pure durum wheat pasta, organic pure durum wheat pasta, and the blended ham pasta produced by the diversified rotation. The functional units used for the comparison were the supply of proteins or energy to human diets. The LCA study included impacts of crop production, grain milling for semolina production, pasta processing, and all transports. It also took into account the use of all co-products of 3 compare systems. Whether expressed per kilogram of protein or per megajoule of energy, LCA results indicate lower impacts for the diversified system in all impact categories. This comparison illustrates the interest of diversifying a rotation with the introduction of AMP for blended pasta production. The diversified system displays lower impacts for an equivalent contribution to human diets. Also thanks to the work of evaluating the diversification practice in the case study 9 farms, Diver Impacts has generated the opportunity to further investigate and promote innovative trajectories based on hemp cultivation and supply chains, which have given rise to 2 operational groups on this issue involving both the case study 9 farms and the scientific partners, as well as other territorial actors. These 2 operative groups therefore take over the baton of the project and continue its mandate to build paths of sustainability and participatory innovation in the Sicilian context. Thank you for your attention.
Someone in the audience better knows this case study than me. You said, I think, everybody. What was interesting in this case today, it was vegetables, and most of the tools that we had at the beginning of the project, it's for cropping systems, but with cash crops, and for instance with rapeseed and wheat. And the concept of cropping system is not relevant when you are in a vegetable farm. So it was interesting to develop an adapted tool at this case specifically. So it was the case study number 23, and it was very interesting because it's very diverse vegetable farmers. Very proud of the diversity of their productions, of their independence, and the sustainability they perceived. And the challenge was if you have a complex productions, then you will have high workloads, and there is a pressure to simplify and to diminish this workload. So the solution that were identified at the beginning was to knowledge development and exchange on organizational and technical solution. So it was to work together and to exchange. So the use of the tool, it was to have a sustainability assessment at this specific scale as a learning tool, and especially when you change, what will be the impacts. And also, as I said before, it's also a way to explore the differences between farms. Okay, so this is the design of the smart diversification tool. You know that there is a smart tool, well known and very developed by FIBL, and it's very complicated with a lot of indicators, and it was adapted and simplified in the case of diversification. So the very alpha version was derived from SMART, and it was applied to 5 farms, and there was exchanges with the farms, because it was interesting to have it was not bottom. It was interesting because in this case it's useful to have the feedbacks from the users and to include the feedbacks from the users in the second version that was delivered at the end of 2020. And it was the beta versions. So the first calculation was made with the beta version, and there was a workshop with farmers on group results, feedbacks, on request for further development. So at the end, with these exchanges, it was a co-conception of the tool. There was a final tool that will be released during 2020. So, the case study testimony, so there were feedback and challenges from the CS perspectives, because it was interesting to discuss about the results on the indicators that were used in the tool. So it was it implies at the end that some of the indicators were adapted or changed in the new version of the tool, and there was a finding that there was a lack of reference scores for the local context, and it's not only the case for this case studies. Most of the time it's difficult to benchmark what the farmers are doing in a context. And for the design, the link between the diversification and sustainability was not clear. The data quality, it was variable against a group of farmers, but it's most of the time it's the case, and sometimes we have inconsistent assessments, and sometimes the expectation they were not the perceived sustainability performance that they had was not what was calculated, so they were quite deceived. So the effects on the tool development, there is a need a new EU-wide, I will read it because I'm sorry, EU-wide benchmarking data for key indicators from SMART. There is a need. Indicators, several new ones were developed, but still cannot capture the full complexity of this type of farms. And there is a reorganization of results to present the level of diversification and sustainability performance separately because the link was difficult to make. Okay, so the conclusions is the relative failure of the tool assessment to help the CS goals because the chronology of the adaptation was not the right one because the needs of the farmer was from the very beginning of the project, and this co-conception made that the final tool is available at the end of the project. So there is stimulating discussion, there is interesting feedbacks, but there is a loss of interest by the farmer because the results were too long to arrive. It was an absolute success coming from it's Mike speaking, okay? Mike is a designer. So it's an absolute success in tool development and benefited from the CS interaction. So it's very variable feedback, and it shows the interest. It shows the interest of co-conception with end users. The tool will be distributed by the Zenodo platform at the end of 2020, and the key lesson is don't combine development and application of a new tool at the same time. Co-conception is, as said, an absolute success, but be careful by the chronology of co-conception then use, and modify your expectation when you're a designer accordingly for all actors. Feedback is really important in the design of this kind of tool. So I will let the floor to Auke and Olivier, because I think it's finished for this case study. I hope I was clear, and Marianne will be happy from my presentation. Hope so.
Yes, thank you, Frederic. I'm sure Mariam and Michael might be jealous of you because you have been very good. And,
I think now Olivier and I can introduce a little bit into our case study and how we worked together with MyIdea. So first, starting where we are located. Our case study, I think it's the number 3. It's located in the center of Lower Saxony of Germany, so yeah, directly in the north and west, in a region with quite a big high variety of soils, thanks to the marsh region around the Weser, and then quite poor sandy soils around it. So this caused a high variety of farm types in our region, combined with the high variety or high number of farms in general. We had the problem that whatever problem we want to tackle, most fit for all situations, are quite hard to implement with the variety of farms we have. The case study itself is based on our existing knowledge and experience in the water advisory, water protection work, and so we started from this with the idea of adding more catch crops and improved management to improve the water quality and the actual work on water protection. The baseline question for this was, can we make water protection a win-win situation, while for the moment we have the regulation on the one hand producing costs or negative impacts for the farmers, but on the other hand crop diversification, especially the addition of catch crops, could be a positive thing for the farmers, but it needs to be combined and reviewed if we really can get a win-win situation out of this. But on the other hand, we still need to have in mind that we have a high variety of farms and soil types in our region, so we need to make sure that the strategies we want to develop and we want to promote we have something that fits for every farm type and gives the benefits we need there.
Thank you. So the focus is not on the tool, but I will try to present you Maelia in few sentences. Usually I take 30 minutes or 4 hours to present Maelia, but today it is about 5 sentences. So what is Maelia? Maelia is an agent-based modeling platform used to perform integrated assessment of agricultural systems in landscape. In Maelia, a geographic information system is used to provide a detailed description of the spatial structure of the investigated territory, while coupled models simulate the daily dynamics of human activities and ecological systems and of their interaction. Maelia can be used for assessing a large range of scenarios regarding cropping and farming systems, water management, biomass processing, climate changes, market prices, and policies. In Maelia, each field and farm are represented whatever the size of the investigated territory. Simulation of their dynamics along years provide outputs used to assess a large range of indicators regarding, for example, water, nitrogen and carbon cycles, greenhouse gases emissions, growth margins, or workload. It's your turn. 5 sentences.
Well, hoping that everyone has understood this so complex model. At least as far as I did. Maelia became quite interesting for us because we are working on water protection, and if you want to if you want to increase water quality, you're always working on a catchment area, so you're not able to work on farm size or field size. You have to take the whole catchment area into account to evaluate what fits and what doesn't. Of course, that's it. The one big positive point for Maelia for us was the possibility of the ex-ante analysis. So for the moment we know what we have tried in water catchment areas, but now we need innovative systems, innovative ideas, and for this Maelia offered the potential to create new systems and to evaluate them before we have tried them in practice, which is quite handy. And of course, Maelia, based on the different levels it is working on and all the data it combines, provides us with the opportunity to measure indicators and to measure parameters which are quite hard to define or to calculate on other levels. So hopefully this helps us to develop strategies and recommendations for not only the farmers in single water protection areas, but also for the whole region later on. Yeah, to conclude, or to display our experiences with Maelia, it's not surprising that first, before you get any results, it takes something to set it up and to make it worth So it's not that easy than the toolbox Aline presented, just a few clicks and a few minutes of data input and you get the results. Maelia needs data about management practices, about the region, soil, climate, number of farms, type of farms, and so on. So you have to collect quite a lot of data, and you have to put it into a format that Maelia can work with, which again needs a lot of time. And it's not possible to underestimate it, but of course it's worth it to make it the shortcut here. What helps you a lot to limit the amount of time and data you need is a good definition of your scope and of the region. So if you go too big and want to look at too many different parameters, you get lost and you can take years for all the preparation. But in our case, we restricted ourselves to one catchment area where we have good expert data on, expert knowledge, and this makes it quite handy to work with. Another problem is that we now left the field where just a creative agricultural advisor could work alone with the model and with the knowledge he has. So on the one hand, you need to know what agricultural measures you need to input into the system and how the interactions are made. On the other hand, you need to know how you have to enter the data and how Maelia then calculates things. So it's not sufficient to have only computer science knowledge at hand or agricultural knowledge. You need both of it. And what helps a lot is if you have some linking colleague who has a little understanding of both to help to translate all the data you collect and all the input, or even the output data Maelia produces. So just if you have two different guys making the work, there's always some missing information due to the communication and failed understanding. This is quite a lot what it takes, but in the end, the output can give you quite a lot back. So the big benefit here is that once you have set up a baseline scenario, you get a quite straightforward way of processing. You have the agent-based modeling, so you can always trace back the results you get to single calculations, to single interventions, to single actions in the model, which is quite nice just for the advisor to look what causes which problem and makes it more easy to display or to explain the results to the audience later on. On the other hand, we have a big variety of trustworthy indicators and parameters already implemented into the model. So we as basic advisors can trust the results to some extent given by Maelia. We don't have to ask for the sources and if the calculations are true, because that's always already review work done by setting up Maelia in the beginning. And what is quite the most important point for us, since we are working in the water catchment areas, together with several stakeholders, not only farmers but also the water agencies and the policymakers, we are getting results in a scale which is important for everyone and which most of the stakeholders then are interested in. So if you want to communicate with the water agency about changes on farm level, they don't really get the point, since they're only interested in the results on the water, and so you need to calculate things on the catchment areas. So this is possible with Maelia, and I think since we have this aim, this is the big striking point here.
So before the conclusion,
Indicators you produce with the satellite data in the Maelia product?
You can have all the indicators about the nitrogen cycle, nitrate leaching, ammonia emissions, nitrogen uptake, and so on. you can have information about water flow, evaporation, transpiration, percolation, and if you use, but it was not the case in this case studies, the hydrologic module, you can simulate river flows and so on. You can have indicators about carbon storage and all the element component of the greenhouse gases balance. And you can have information about economics, gross margins or net gross margins of cropping systems, and you can aggregate them at all levels, farming systems, for example. And you can have information about workload for each field or each cropping system or each farm. And all these indicators are calculated at the field and farm level, and so you can have aggregated indicators, or you can identify which farm win and which farm don't win, lose, in a given scenario.
Just a short question about Maelia. Does it include forestry?
It doesn't include forestry, but we have a new project in which we want to couple Maelia with a CAPSYST platform that simulates demography, the growth, and the management of forest, to be able to simulate agricultural and forest management in a given territory.
I think we have one question from the mentee.
Yes, thank you. In fact, in order to facilitate the mobilization of these different tools, because we saw that this is quite huge in terms of data collections and so on, do you make some development in order to couple them with some database that were already fulfilled by the farmers, for example, the land use, the registrations and so on? I don't know if you develop such type of approach.
I can answer for Maelia. We are working with advisory services in France to couple Maelia with management tool in farm, to be able to collect the crop management information directly from these tools into Maelia, and to have a quicker application of Maelia on a given farm or given group of farm or a given territory.
Any other question?
Take the floor.
While this work has been going on, we've had if you ask farmers what has been going on during this time, they'll tell you that member states have been preparing for the reform of the common agricultural policy, which will kick in hopefully next year. My question is to what extent have the local groups, and taking this model as an example, been engaged in that process? And to what extent, and has any of their contributions been welcomed or used?
Well, is the question based on so if we as a case study were connected to the recommendations for the CAP, or
the establishment of indicators, for instance, the national measures, the national plans that each member state has to produce. Germany is behind most countries in that respect.
Yeah, and of course we weren't asked. So it's the communication, at least for our case study, was not that existing. And I can't speak for the other case studies, but at least so, yeah, from our work at the basis, there was no real interaction for this, and probably since we were working on producible knowledge and on the indicators or the results, So we were a bit behind for the CAP 23, so that may be a major issue here.
I've just mentioned that we have designed a new diversity index, and the father is here, just in front of me, and we tried, and Antoine is more aware about it, to use it, and it was asked to use it for the CAP reform, but it's always the same questions. It seems to be too complicated and you need too many data. Do you want to elaborate on it?
Well, this will be discussed session after the lunch break, where this indicator will be presented. But it's true that it's difficult to engage with this into this process as a research project. We tried then to, it is at the French level, to get in this national discussion, and we said, okay, next time. So 2 years from now, when we are digested, and that will be discussed.
Yes, and just the input data, the rotation. So you know it's not so complicated, but it was too much complicated. So
yes, but we were thinking about simplification of the tool, but the problem was not maybe in the tool, but at higher level.
The word is reality.
Some data that could be used because they are free available. For example, the land parcel system could be the basis to know the rotation of the crops, and satellite images coming from Copernicus can provide some information regarding at least the surfaces of the vegetation through NDVI or chlorophyll index, and a lot of index that could be extracted from satellite images. Maybe something not also in the radar domain. Thank you.
Yes, I know that Christian is working in another project called NIVA about the use of satellite data to provide easy indicators, not easy indicators, but to be more able to calculate indicators according to, I don't know the type of satellite data, but no, Christian will answer you because he is involved in the utilization of satellite data, to calculate indicators.
Yes, I'm in this project, NIVA project, with this hope to get more data for calculating indicator from remote sensing data. Until now, we can have data on the development of crops. They are working hard to get data on the tillage, if you can see if the soil is tilled or not. Maybe on the harvest, sowing data, and so on. But regarding fertilization, pesticide use, don't dream. It's not for now. We need the data from the database, from the registration and the record, but that's another story. But there's some data for some simple indicators we can get. And we derive some indicators, one for carbon, one for nitrogen, one for carbon sequestration.
So it was the proposal from Pasquale. You can see that it's possible, but not for all.
We are working also with ERI in a project called Steropes within the AJP soil programs, trying to define methodologies to map topsoils, of course, carbon in the soils, and also soil moistures. That could be, I think, two interesting parameters to run Melia, also for the hydrological parts.
as you understood, I think it is clear that the big issue when we want to use such tools, it is data. And if we want to progress when using tools like the ones that has been presented, we have to progress to a way to collect data as simple as possible and to couple database and tools. As explained before, effectively, in my area we use a land parcel identification system, but it is different in each country, and for each country you are discovering a new database, and it is a big issue also. So I think we have to keep in mind that if we not progress regarding data, we will not progress regarding applying tools.
Any other question? No? Stefano? Yes, it's time for conclusions.
Do we have another presentation for the conclusions?
No, we have.
Yes, I have summarized maybe 2 or 3 main points as conclusions. And what I guess I wrote, and I do hope my colleagues will agree, that what is needed is to have, first of all, a clear strategy to make the actors aware that the tools for sustainability assessment are a major need. We have seen during the testimonies many examples in which these tools used both as ex-ante or ex-post approach have been very useful to guide actors and to let them take proper decision during the transition towards diversification, towards sustainability. This has to be done, so these tools of course have to be developed or expanded or adapted. This kind of work should be continued, and of course what's emerged is that this has been done in accordance to a participatory approach that is fundamental to make the actors aware and to let these tools acceptable for the actors that have to use them. And this is relevant, and what is clear and is emerged also by the comments of the discussion is that this is a research path that has not to be confused with the current use of these tools. There is a research strategy for development and expansion, adaptation, and then there is there are research needs how to facilitate the current use of these tools. One more point is that data availability is a major issue for both the development, the expansion, as well as the use of these tools. Different networks are available at national and also some of them at European levels, but there is a strong need to harmonize them. No? And likely the sustainability data network should be implemented, so specifically designed to collect and to store data able to be used in tools for sustainability analysis, and at both national and European level. The Farm Sustainability Data Network that is also mentioned in the Farm to Fork strategy could be part of the solution, and as Juan just said, this will probably be discussed later on in the afternoon. The third point is how to guarantee the legacy of the work done, how to ensure the survival of the tools after their development. Well, there are several strategies that can be simultaneously implemented. One of these is, of course, to have new research and innovation projects or new programs. We have here different research projects, new research projects that will continue this work has been mentioned. This morning has been also mentioned the agroecology partnership that will be a big framework in which this kind of approach towards sustainability will be continued, and maybe it is the case that in this partnership a clear role to guarantee the work around the development of tools for sustainability should be guaranteed. Also, clustering different projects and programs in this perspective could be for sure useful. We have done some experiences in Diver Impacts and with the project of the cluster to which Diver Impacts also joined, and we made some work together with the different projects, and we have developed also a tool collecting all the indicators that have been developed by these 5 different projects. So it's a big work that I guess can help for sure in the future. Also, creation of startups, private public startups that can continue the work and can help in let's say taking alive the tools that will be and that are and will be developed. And also, as we mentioned during the presentation, the toolboxes for identifying and selecting indicators, tools and methods for sustainability assessment are for sure something that can guarantee the legacy of the work of the big research work that we all have been doing in this time. One other need is that these toolboxes have to be regularly updated. Otherwise, again, this work could be lost. It is everything on my side. I don't know if you want to add something else. No? Do you feel comfortable with this?
Yes.
Great.
That's good. I'm French and it's
So
time to lunch.